Hey cinematic composers, so I'm gonna create a coupon for our I'm a Composer course, which usually sells for $1,249. The name of the coupon is I'm a Composer $99. It's gonna be a discount of $1,150. So what this means is that if you now go to cinematiccomposing.com/I'm a composer and you join the course, and in here you add the I'm a Composer 99 coupon, you'll get access to this amazing course, which is more than 11 hours of content, pages and pages of content for just $99 instead of $1,249. This course will teach you how to compose orchestral music in different styles, you can see: love, sadness, suspense, etc., action with intensity, adventure, so many others. It starts with 4 easy to follow along videos where I walk you step by step on how to compose in this particular style. You're gonna see me compose live so you can replicate what I'm doing. And then for those who are nerds like me, there is infinite score analysis of some of the major movies and blockbusters of all time. We have transcribed, reduced, and analyzed some of the most iconic film scores. And then we structured the conclusions so you know how to compose in that particular style. All of this for just $99. Good luck. Hey cinematic composers. So, in this video, we're gonna learn how to compose a Christmas song that sounds like this. And we're going to learn how to do this in 7 very easy, simple to follow along steps. We're gonna start, number 1, by understanding how to make this music sound magic, fantasy, Christmas. So we're gonna start with the style definition and then we'll start the composing process. But let's start here. So let's see how we could define Christmas music: excitement, joy, curiosity, awe, playfulness. All of these, we could say Christmas music is a form of fantasy magic style type of music. So first of all, we're gonna define the style in terms of like tempo, rhythm, harmony, melody, and orchestration, because there are certain things that will not sound magical, right? And there are others that will. Type of thing, right? So I'm gonna read through this fairly quickly. You can download these slides, link in description. So there we go. So style definition, well, we talked about curiosity, awe, playfulness, danger, etc. Tempo, rhythm doesn't make that big of a difference, but so 3/4, 3/8, or 4/4 work. I generally prefer 3/4 for this kind of style, but both work. Tempo, range, pretty broad. In my opinion, there are not like specific rhythmic patterns like in adventure. There are specific rhythmic patterns that are very common, very cliche. In this particular style, not necessary. When it comes to harmony, we're gonna stay mostly triadic, but sometimes some extensions can add a little bit of excitement, which could work for this type of Christmas music, something like this. So if we had an accompaniment based on this C major chord, right? It's not magical, but if we added like the 7th and the 9th, then it adds a little bit of a spark like this. Also, a trick that works pretty well when it comes to harmony to make it sound more magical is to not using chord progressions that are too tonal. Meaning, if we went from, C to F, which is 4, G, 1, this sounds okay, but doesn't sound magical. If we do something like, sounds more magical. And there are many different ways to explain these median chords, etc. But here's how I like to explain it. It's way, it feels more simple to understand, but it's the something that works well in the magical and fantasy style when it comes to harmony is moving parallel chords, either major, minor, or diminished by major or minor thirds, seconds, or tritones. For example, going from a C to E flat, both major, to G flat, right? And not quite perfect. There was an interval there that made it sound a little bit ethnic, but definitely it had a flair of fantasy. Let's continue with the next one, which is going to be melody. Both major and minor scales can be used. You'll see the piece that we're going to compose, very, very simple, major scale. You can use these scales as well, have a little bit of a more magical flair to it. If you don't know these scales, what I recommend is go to ChatGPT and ask, well, what is this, Lydian diminished? What's the Lydian diminished starting in C, let's say? And then it'll explain it for you. And that way, you don't need to know all the music theory. But in this case, for example, the Lydian would be this one, right? The classic one with the fourth upper semitone, right? Type of thing. Then we would flatten the G or the fifth, right? And it would sound like this. You could have something like, right? Sounds a little bit more magic. By the way, I like Dorian scale as well for this type of, for a little bit of magic to it. But the cool thing about these scales is that you can have both major or minor in the same scale, or kind of, and that's create that magic fantasy feeling to it. And mixolydian as well. What I like to do, by the way, is to I write the scale, right, and then the chords, and it just makes it easier for me if I'm not used to writing this particular scale or key or whatever, right? It just makes it easier if I have it in front of me. But just to illustrate how using something like this we could create something that sounds magical, with this guy we could write something that sounds like this. All right, let's continue. So you can read the rest, you can download the slides, a link in description. Let's go to orchestration, to me the most important one and the one that I have the most fun with. But again, Christmas music, I think it derives from fantasy magic with the kind of like Christmas orchestration that adds that excitement and joy and curiosity and awe and playfulness. And that's where orchestration comes into place. It's very, very important. I like to think when it comes to orchestration, I like to compare orchestration to Christmas decoration, right? If you think about Christmas decoration, is all brightness and vibrance and excess sometimes you could say. But this is, in my opinion, what we want to emulate with the orchestration, right? It's very distinctive, frequently uses tremolo strings and trilled parts in woodwinds, things like this. Or the tremolo strings that I showed you earlier, this guy. Moving on, this is pretty common as well. The most important part, I would say, it's the instruments that we use. So these are some of the common ones. So pitch metallic percussion, so celesta, vibraphone, like all the way, like all the time. In this case, for Christmas music, obviously, these ones, the non-pitch metallic, so beltry, triangle, wind chimes, but most importantly for Christmas music, the sleigh bells. So let's include this guy here. but then choir, harp, especially glissandos, pizzicato strings, this kind of thing. So what I call the Christmas orchestration formula in 3 steps would be just like writing music. Generally, we're gonna do the sketch and then orchestrate, and then just add the magic flair to it, right? Add the ear candy magic elements. Basically, as we said, stuff that adds color and vibrance. Through orchestration, add these things, right? And something that I didn't mention is, well, I'll include it in this list. So stuff that adds color and vibrance, like choir, again, string runs, I didn't mention this earlier, string trills and figures, things like this. I will add all the color and excitement that we need, right? Pitch metallic percussion, as we said, especially these guys with bell tree triangle, most important of them all for Christmas music, sleigh bells, and everything that we've discussed earlier. These are just some examples. Essentially, you want to think things that add color, magic, and vibrance. For example, think tremolo strings instead of regular sustained strings for this kind of music when appropriate. All right, so we've talked about tempo, rhythm, harmony, melody, orchestration, the formula, and now we're going to talk structure. Structure doesn't really matter. If it's a score, like you're scoring, it doesn't apply because you're going to be following the scene. If it's a song, like what we're going to be composing right now, it can be anything, but generally it's going to be song form. So ABA, AABB, AA, right? Intro plus A plus bridge plus B. What we've done here is, or rather what we're going to be working on, we're going to have an intro. Then we're gonna go for A, A prima. So we repeat the A a little bit bigger, then B, B prima again, and we'll repeat the intro again with a little variation, and then repeat the A, which is gonna be bigger, and the prima much bigger, and then finally we're gonna have a coda. Okay, this should give us for like 1 to 2 minutes of music. So let's get started. Now, before we transition to actually writing the music, I'm going to share with you a few tips and tricks that will simplify the composing process in this style. First of all, harmony, we've mentioned this earlier. Don't write chord progressions that are too tonal. In this piece, I did not follow this rule. They are pretty much tonal. Everything that sounds Christmas-y in this piece is because of the orchestration mostly, but this will help because this will add a little bit of a fantasy magic flavor if that's what you want for your Christmas music to not just sound Christmas but also a little bit magic fantasy, right? So again, what works well to add a little bit of fantasy magic is to moving in parallel chords, either major, minor, or diminished by major or minor thirds, seconds or tritons. I've showed this earlier. And again, there are different ways to explain these median chords, etc. But this is something that's very easy to understand. And so that's why I explain it this way. So in terms of harmony, this is a trick that I like. In terms of melody, here's what I like to do, and this works pretty well. So imagine that you would start writing the melody, and you can use, again, a scale that adds magic fantasy like the ones that we've showed earlier. These ones. But again, I recommend starting with the melody, something like this, for example. Let's imagine something like this. Right? And so we've written the melody first, and then we're gonna write the harmony, but a cool little thing is to have the melody as the third of the underlying chord. So the kind of like where the note lands, placing a chord where the melody note is the third. So for example, so because the E is the third, right? So, right? So this kind of technique where the harmony kind of flows with the melody helps for the harmony sound less tonal, and it helps for this music to sound a little bit more fantasy, which is what we want. All right, the third trick is in orchestration. It's everything we have discussed, just to stay creative. I would say just go crazy. This is not the time for orchestration to be contained, so just go big. All right, so how to make it sound Christmassy, style definition, then let's write some music. Let's go with the intro first. So number 1, we're gonna start with the sketch. Remember, it's always going to be a 3-step formula, okay? We're gonna first do the sketch, then we'll do the orchestration, and then we'll add all the magic on top. So we're gonna start with the sketch. Very, very simple. There is no actual chord progression. We're repeating the same chord, 1, 2, 3, and then 4 times. I'll explain this in a second. So we have 4 bars. What I was hearing in my head was this melody that you'll hear in a second with kind of this pedal in the low end. Sounds like this. Cool, so that's the intro. Now let's move to orchestration. We're going to have the tubular bells, cellos, and choir doing this part like this. And for these low pedal notes, we're going to have trombones and double basses like this. All together, this part sounds like this. And all together, it sounds like this. But it could sound much better when we add the magic layer to it, which is the third step in the formula. Now everything sounds like this. Now let's see what I added to add this magical element to it. First, the celesta and the arp with the staccato high strings. All together sound like this. Then the slate bells and shakers. And the woodwind trills. And finally, the strings, runs, and figures. And all together now sounds like this. But I felt that there was something missing. I felt like the balance was a little bit heavy on the right side of things, and also I felt that there was some space in the horns range side, so I added this horns line. In context. All right, so this is the plan. We've got the intro. Now we're gonna create section A. And then we're gonna repeat section A again. Yep, we're gonna repeat, just copy paste. Then we're gonna create something new, which is B. And then we're gonna repeat section B. Again, copy paste. Now, in order for this to not be too repetitive, I've got a plan. And the plan is A, it's going to be a very simple melody. It's a very simple melody. It's gonna go like this, right? Then when we repeat A, we're gonna have the same melody, right? That continues here, but it'll have some counterpoint elements that are going to add a little bit of richness and variation to the melody. Then we're gonna do B, which is going to be a completely different melody. This one is going to be a little bit more busy type of melody. And then when we repeat B again, we're gonna add to this melody, which is going to be the same, a little bit of counterpoint as well. Also, obviously, A is going to be orchestrated like this. B is going to have a slightly different orchestration, right? Then B is going to have a different orchestration, and then B repetition is going to have a different orchestration than this one. That's the plan. Let's now create the melody for section A, which is going to be this one. To learn how to compose a melody with an accompaniment, check out this video, link in description, or just click right here. But now continuing with the 3-step formula to create a Christmas type of music or sound, we've created the sketch for section A. Then we're gonna orchestrate, and third, we're gonna add the ear candy and magic elements. So this is the sketch, and to orchestrate it, we're gonna keep this super simple. We're gonna, for background, which is this section here, the harmonies, it's going to be kids, choir, and flautando strings, meaning like very soft strings. So we've got the melody in the piano, plus the kids, choir, and flautando strings that sound like this. The next step is going to be to enhance the melody, to orchestrate the melody, and to do so, we're going to have the arp, which sounds like this, but sort of like this. But instead of playing regular notes, we're gonna have the arp playing a technique that's called bisbigliando, which is subtle, but it's going to be a technique that works so well for what we are trying to create, that ear candy, that vibrance, that color. We're gonna have the arp over the right side, and on the other side, we're gonna have the marimba tremolando. So we're gonna have the piano, arp bisbigliando, marimba tremolo, and then we're gonna have in the second part of the melody, the flutes coming up. All together sounds like this. And then in this second part of the melody, flutes and oboe or English horn coming up. Also, we've discussed how we orchestrated the background, melody, and now the counterpoint. Counterpoint is what it will also add the step number 3 in the formula: sketch, orchestrate, and magic. Counterpoint is what's going to add a little bit of that magic element that's required for this Christmas-y type of sound. We're going to have choir, woodwind trills in this case. We're going to have celesta, and a few more things. So we've got the choir doing this gesture here, which goes with the woodwind trills. They generally play in the note change of the melody. And if we isolate the piano melody and the choir and woodwind trills, it sounds like this. And in between these, we're going to have a celesta, a glockenspiel, and an arp doing this. This is the glockenspiel, the celesta. And finally, we would add the mandatory bells, and all together. Next, we're going to repeat section A. It's going to be it's the same melody. It's going to be slightly bigger. We're going to enhance the melody with instruments that sound well in the mid-low register. So we're going to have on one side horns and the other side violas. They both play in different extremes, left, right, of the orchestra panning. And all together now sounds like this, the melody. So that was for the melody. For the background, what we had was kids choir, very soft, and flautando violins, which is very soft technique in the strings and the violins. Now we're gonna add layers of tremolo strings that sound like this, and pizzicatos. Sounds like this. And for those counterpoint elements that we said that we'd be adding, to add extra variation to this repetition of the A section, we're gonna now have the celesta doing these type of gestures. in between, kind of like in the melody holes in a way. You see the most active part of the celesta's counterpoint happen when the melody kind of like stops like this, right? To transition from A to A prima, or the second repetition of the A, we're gonna have a soft cymbal swell like this. This is the end of section A, going into section A, the repetition here. And this is the cymbal swell that connects both. All right, so intro done, section A and the repetition done. Let's go to section B. And as we know, we're gonna start with the sketch first, then we're gonna orchestrate. The sketch is going to look something like this. You'll see this is very repetitive in this case, and it's very simple as well, which for this kind of music, it just works. It works better most of the times. So the melody starts up there, sounds something like this. Right, we're here. Now you'll see that it repeats. If you look, it's the same note, it repeats very, very similar, right? It's gonna do here, starting here, it's something like this. Right, so the only change are these notes here and this one here. And the first time it resolves, and here it goes up. Now, so this is B, and now we're gonna repeat B again with a slight variation. So as repetitive as this is, the melody is contrasting with A, which is important. It's very different. So again, we've done B, and now we're gonna repeat B again. We're here. Which was an exact repetition of what we had here. And now we're gonna go here. Right, this is the difference. This is more conclusive. I'm gonna do it one more time. Okay, I messed up a little bit. And by the way, this note should be a B flat, not an A sharp. I forgot. Mistake. Now the accompaniment or background layer of this section is very, very simple. It's basically a valse type of accompaniment with the staccato strings. We've got low strings, cellos, and double basses with the violas, and it sounds like this. So for the entire time, it goes like this. And then in the melody, we're gonna have the strings and the horns that are going to be growing as B repeats. So here we're gonna have a smaller horns group. We're gonna have 4 horns plus violins 1 and 2 in unison. And then when we repeat, the horns group is gonna get bigger, 6 horns. And then as we get to the end, we're gonna have 12 horns. And the strings here are going to open from unison to octaves, like this. See, this line down here is the horns, the strings here. And then the strings are going to open in octaves. In addition to this, we are going to have one trombone doubling the horns line, because this is a cool one, because the trombone is going to open. So if we had the horns that you generally sound over the right side, the trombones are going to open they're gonna widen the melody on the other side. And also the trombone is gonna add a little bit more of bite and aggression to the melody, which sometimes is nice, but just one trombone in this case. Here's the solo trombone in combination with the 4 horns. Now that solo trombone that we were talking about in the second repetition it's going to grow to, or it's going to move from playing with the melody to performing an oompa oompa accompaniment like this. And then towards the end, it'll play a counter melody like this. So all of that in section B plus the bells and the timpani is going to sound like this. By the way, I forgot to mention that at the end of each one of these phrases here, we've got the choir doing something like this. And this would conclude section B. Now we're going to repeat the intro, just a tad bigger. This will sound like this. We've already discussed this, so there's not much to add here other than I added these woods doing this. So all together coming from section B and doing the transition, which is this guy here, and then going into the intro repetition. So end of section B, transition, and intro repetition. So this was the intro, and now we're going to repeat section A. And it's going to be bigger. Something that I like to do is, we presented A initially, it was a 3/4 time signature. This time we're going to change it to 4/4. It's this guy that I showed earlier. And the cool thing about this part is that even though it sounds big, it's actually very, very simple. We're gonna have all the kind of like high strings, so by violins 1, 2, and violas playing the big melody, and generally that sounds over the left side. And then we're gonna have horns doubling that melody also over the left side. And then we're gonna have the cellos adding a little bit of the ostinato with repeated staccato notes, and the double basses playing low notes. And then we're gonna repeat that in almost every section. So again, see, violins 1, 2, and viola playing the melody in octaves, then the cellos with the repeated notes, and the double basses playing something that looks like this. Again, the simplest orchestration, kind of overblown, kind of like big melody with the violins. Then we open double octaves with the violins. The cellos here in the middle. See, that's very well structured. We don't have any conflicting. There's the cellos not conflicting with the melody. The melody is on top. Then the cello here with the repeated notes. This would sound something like this, just for context. And then when we go bigger, when we add the horns, then it adds that more cinematic, epic sound. We're gonna deepen the low end or reinforce double basses with an electric bass. And we're gonna add depth to the violins and horns melody with choirs just playing the same melody, and trumpets section kind of like playing the same melody but sometimes going counterpoint like this. And then in the moments where the melody kind of like stops, when the melody rests, then we're gonna have a filler or something that adds interest in between those moments of rest for the melody. It's gonna be like the typical type of thing with trumpets and trombones, with the high woodwinds adding brightness. I'm talking about this. So we talked about the orchestration of the melody, so the background or accompaniment and melody. And now we have to talk about the magic element in that 3-step formula: sketch, orchestration, and adding the magic, which is going to be the same things that we have been using. It's going to be the woodwinds, runs, strings, figures and trills and things like this. As well as the arp, the bells, and the tubular bells. And all together sounds like this. And the coda is self-explanatory, just a small little piano, noir in this case, that presents the melody one more time, and we're good to go. A little bit of Spitfire chamber strings tremolando at the end, and that's it. So with this, we've covered section A, repetition, coda. And remember, if you want to download the MIDI file of this project, as well as the Cubase file and the PDF slides as well, link in description. Other than that, if this was useful, consider subscribing, and Merry Christmas.